Hi, everybody. I am so excited. This is Kristine from Mom Vegan Love. And today I have Sheena here, and we're going to talk all about addiction, recovery, and just finding ourselves. So
Love
can
it.
you start, Sheena? Oh, sorry. I'm a blah. Oh, I froze.
You're so funny.
Okay. This is obviously very professional, and we know exactly what we're doing. Technology is on our side.
Yes.
Um,
Praying to all the internet gods.
Pray with us. We can do this. Mhm. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with sobriety?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Kristine, for this opportunity. This is fun. So I got sober. My sobriety, my official sobriety date is August 17th, 2021. So it's really only about 15 months ago. But I had a lot of whispers before I actually decided to cut the cord on alcohol for good. A lot of those whispers for me came in the forms of let's try like 30-day challenge with no alcohol, or let's try, no alcohol on the weekends, or whatever, all the little games, all the little things that you do that say where that voice inside your head is saying like, we need to reconfigure this relationship. And so what started as sort of like an insight at some point along the way just became getting louder noises, voices just saying it's time to try something new. Um, it's it's so interesting how 15 months of sobriety and clear-headed thinking has shifted my perspective on so many of the things that I did and the way that I operated. And the most accurate lens I can give myself at this point, 15 months later, is I'm a highly sensitive empath. And I have always been very connected to a spiritual realm. So much so that in early traumas, I had a superpower of disconnecting from my body. And it was a way of navigating life without being fully present in the pain of my human vessel. And it was disassociation, but as a child, it became my superpower of how I navigated life. And maybe I would get lost in my imagination as a child or lost in stories. I loved reading books. I loved learning. Even though I wasn't that excited about school, I did fall into that sort of perfectionism, peacekeeper role at home, where it was like, make sure you do the good grades, do the right thing. I put a lot of effort into things that I did to try to achieve mastery as a way to sort of feel like work, you might like fill my soul cup and feel a bit of self-worth in my life. So I had these kind of things that I have kind of seen the way that I navigated life. Just trying to be really good at everything, trying to not ruffle anybody's feathers, staying small, keeping quiet, and just kind of staying in my lane. And so the way that sort of evolved in my life was as I went through more traumas in my life, I amplified that superpower of disconnection. And whether it was alcohol, it was workaholic, it was just perfectionism in other ways. I just had all of these attachments, these unhealthy codependent attachments to things to kind of self-soothe. What I would say now is that it took me a really long time to come out of fight or flight. I thought once I put down the drink that all my problems were going to go away. But, about 90 days afterwards, you start really facing your problems for the first time in a really lucid state, and also really vulnerable without having these superpower tools that you had used. So for me, that's sort of a lot of what my journey has been, is just understanding my relationship to these self-destructive behaviors that I had adopted. And essentially my process now has just been learning to come back inside my body and be okay in there. That for me was definitely brought online from extensive yoga. I did a yoga teacher training, and that was a huge process of like 10 months of actively working to get inside my body. And that year was highly transformative in the fact that, and this was even before I was completely sober, but I did take that 10 months off of drinking when I did the yoga teacher training. There was an impulse in my body that just wanted to eliminate this, to try this. So it was like almost the universe had just given me this paradigm shift, this opportunity to say, instead of reaching for this, let's try to look for this. So that started a whole process of me re-entering my body and slowly learning how to be okay in there. And that's, you know, that's a spiral. That's a constant helix of learning and coming back around the same experiences with a new lens. So I'm just in the constant cycle of coming back around to see new eyes on how I had kept myself alive through various survival tactics. Just suffering a lot of the emotional experience of abuse, of neglect and abandonment in my life, and rejection. And then validating that through the co-creation of experiences that led me through a lot of abuse and sexual abuse, all kinds of abuse throughout various relationships. So yeah, the coming home journey has been a beautiful one, but the biggest one has just been learning how to be okay inside my body. And so do I call myself an alcoholic? I guess I will. I guess I'll always label myself that way because I know that alcohol was a self-sabotaging tool that I used. But at the end of the day, I'm a highly sensitive empath that used various tools to cope with this world.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, it's like you're telling my story. I hear all that, like for sure. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And what do you think were your main reasons for addiction? Like, you mentioned a lot of different things, but do you think there was like one root cause that get you started?
I don't think there was one root cause. I definitely think there was a whole plethora of things. You know, I had two perfectionist, workaholic parents. And so while they were, you know, working so hard to provide for the family, I had absent parents, you know, so my experience in those formative years was not having anybody around. So that put a hole in my heart of feeling less than, like money was more important than me, or work was more important than spending time with me. So I had this void around my worth. So that was constantly trying to fill it in various ways. So that was like an early imprint for me. There was sexual abuse in my teenage years that I would say that was probably my first like pretty hefty trauma. And in that experience, my parents kind of being somewhat involved in that experience, having to take me to the hospital, and they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't say anything. We never talked about it. That like, they know something bad happened and we're never going to talk about it. And that was the lesson that I learned as a teenager, is when something bad happens, like, we're just not going to talk about it. And so that was another just big imprint. So it's kind of like these little things, you know. I did end up losing my father to suicide in 2015. So there was definitely some mental health issues within my family. All my brothers have struggled with mental health and addiction. You know, my mom also struggles with her own mental health issues. So there was just a lot of curriculum within my family of everyone kind of navigating life with all of their, you know, traumas and experiences, and us just kind of overlapping them on top of each other, making it a little bit more difficult. And then I go out into life and I just go and create what's familiar to me, which is chaos and trauma. So then that's my formative, in adult years, is just reliving trauma.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I hear that, just recreating the same story over and over again, and then getting proof that it's right.
Yeah, exactly. Of course I'm worthless because everyone treats me that way.
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
Let me go find the next emotionally unavailable person to be with. This is perfect.
Yeah, that's what I said. No one loves me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's so funny once we kind of can take a step back now in sobriety and view the game we've been playing, and more of some observers, like you're saying, and just being able to like, wow, that's an interesting coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Like,
how wasn't that unique of you to find?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, as you know about me, I'm extensive into the study of the gene keys, which is a philosophy that I absolutely love. And in going through that study of my shadows and exploring them through that lens, I had even uncovered a memory that I had when I was probably like 5 or something, where I went out with my grandfather and his girlfriend. And it was probably one of the only times I ever went out with them. And they left me at a fair. They forgot me. And he ended up getting, he ended up being diagnosed with like dementia and Alzheimer's later on in life. But just unlocking that memory of that little kid who gets left behind and stuck the only time she's with this person. So that also just, I'm like, oh, there's a big imprint there about my fear of big crowds or being left behind or being abandoned, so it's so interesting how we might create an entire identity and lifestyle around one situation that happened when we were 4 years old. And until we go through that journey of looking at all of those things, we may never even notice how we're trying to navigate that wound. And, through now the lens of sobriety that I have now and the deep healing work that I've done, I can say that for many, many years, I managed my symptoms when I thought that I was healed. And I will always say that I manage my symptoms now, because I just don't even think that we get to a fully healed person when we're in human body.
Yes. Well, I think I hear that. I think once we get it all figured out, we'll just move on.
Yeah. Then we don't need this body anymore. So yeah.
So in that, if we view it that way, every challenge or problem or issue that comes up can be seen as a gift, because here's another way that this same problem's gonna see if you can solve it differently this time. It's like, oh, okay.
And that's literally my life's work now, is going into the shadow, which is life happens to me, finding the gift, which is life happens for me, honoring that process, and allow life to happen through you from that place. So from every shadow, there is a gift. And that's the only perspective I can use now, because it's just the one that makes sense to me. And it's the one I've been looking for so long, that now to see it and understand it, I'm like, okay, all right, it's a challenge. What's the gift? It's kind of an adventure.
Wow. Oh, I love that. So did you have like a rock bottom moment, or was it, you mentioned that it was more like a journey maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I had a lot of rock bottom moments. And it was more about just real health declines, real suffering with suicidal ideation. And yeah, so my rock bottom was taking those breaks and then going back into alcohol, taking a month off and then going out to a party with friends, and just the night after, the morning after a night like that, 30 days off, and then you go out with your friends, the self-talk for me was so horrific, because these weren't whispers anymore. This was like, what you're doing, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it was so damaging to my psyche. Of course, the lawnmowers had to come home.
That's Florida for you. That's all good.
Of course. But that is so much of my rock bottom, is just dealing with how destructive my ego had gotten. So, yeah, I would call that my rock bottom.
Hello, helpful people. Thank you.
Go away.
So this is a gift, right? Life happens for us.
Yeah, this is life happening to us. Just,
To us.
bringing in the sweet smell of freshly cut grass.
There you go. I hear what you're saying there, and there's something I've been pondering about, like codependency. Like, do you feel sometimes that you drank because that's what your friends were doing, and if you would show up and not drink, that would be too odd? And like, what are your thoughts around like that?
So when I learned that my love language was quality time, which in most people's cases is what they didn't feel like they got enough of in childhood, right? So I didn't feel like I got enough quality time. And when I was out drinking with friends,
I can hear you.
Yeah, make this up. Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
But where was I going to say? So when I would be out with friends, I was going out to have quality time. So I was going to where the people were. The people were at the bar. So that's where my little innocent head is. That's where I'm going to go and have a meaningful, intimate conversation. And so I get there, and then I'm awkward because I'm shy. I don't think most people realize how shy I am. I'm very shy. I really don't open up until I've got like a good vibrational read on somebody. And so being in a crowded area, especially, I really like intimate situations. One-on-one time is my favorite. So already going into a crowded place, I've already initiated my self-sabotage, is that I'm going to promise myself an intimate conversation, and I'm going to go to a crowded place where that's definitely not going to happen. And so already, because of the self-sabotage and putting myself in that environment, now I'm going to self-soothe by getting a drink, because I don't have what I'm looking for there, even though I already know that I'm not going to get it. But you know what? There might be some time that we get drunk enough that we go into the big feely conversations, right? So that's like juice. So I'm like, oh, here we go. Let's get into like, what keeps you up at night? What's your biggest fear? But then like, you don't really remember that the next day. And then you had this like really intimate bonding conversation. And the next day you're like, fuck, what did I share? What did I hear? Oh God. And then I would feel like such an asshole. So then that's a more self-sabotage, that I went for the meaningful conversation. I finally got it. And then I fucked it up because I don't really remember it. So we really didn't intimately connect, which just perpetuates that cycle of, well, then I fucked it up. Now let me go drink by myself somewhere else, or something like that, you know? So yeah, so I was going for the meaningful conversations and the illusion that I was going to connect, and then really putting myself into a situation of disconnection. And so it would be awkward for me not to drink at that point. I set myself up for failure, that the way to self-soothe my discomfort is going to be to get a drink.
Yeah, I mean, our addiction monsters, that I like to call them, are pretty savvy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It is crazy to think with a sober brain, like how drunk brain would think. You know, it's so ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, and just even the game to get to that point. Just like, I call my little addiction personality Samantha, and she would just come up with all kinds of good ideas for and reasons to drink, you know. And it feels almost like whispers, like but you can only have one. It's fine.
Yeah.
You deserve it. You worked really hard this week. Gonna make
Yeah.
it work.
Well, they offered it to you. You didn't even ask for it. They offered it.
Yeah.
How am I going to say no? They offered it. It would be
And
impolite.
yeah. Oh, it's not even your fault. Obviously.
Yeah, it's not my fault. Besides, I spend all the money Ubering here, so I got to get my money's worth.
That's a good one. I like that. Yeah. And then, and that's almost like being a part of because the vibration changes, right? So like I went out a while ago and I was the only one that didn't drink. And after a while, they are all off on their own plane. I mean, they are repeating the same thing over and over. And I hear you what you were saying too. I was totally like a drunken therapist. That's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
Just the connection. Like, tell me everything. Okay, how can I help? And then
exactly. Let me fix you in the state of mind that I'm in right now.
Anything is possible. But then the next day,
right. That codependency was on last night.
Yeah. That is so good because that's like the definition of codependency. I'm learning about that, right? Like the first one is like bringing unsolicited advice and help to people.
Let me go look for the broken one, the one that I'm projecting my brokenness on, and then let me fix it.
I'm gonna fix you.
Yeah, I got you, girl. I got you.
There's so many reasons for that, right? Because you're taking the spotlight off yourself, and it's like it's like a drug in itself.
Yeah. And also, I think that also leads into there's so much shame in my drinking. For so long, I had the whisper that I shouldn't be drinking. So there's already shame in my drinking that makes sure to take the attention off of me. Let's put it way over here, way over here, way over here. Let's talk about you, girl. Let's talk about all this over here. So yeah. Clever codependent tricks.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay, let's see. So we talked about this a little bit. Like, have you picked up any other habits, like instead of drinking alcohol? When you quit that, did you move on to something else?
It was sugar. It was definitely sugar. Yeah. It took me a while with sugar. And it was a hard one. And the same time I gave up alcohol, I also gave up meat and most dairy. And so I was very intentional at this point. It's so funny how I can be like, yeah, I'll drink whatever. And then like a week later, like, no, I'm putting no birth control, no toxins, no nothing in my body. And like, last week you really didn't give a fuck, but okay. Paradigm shift. So once I started giving up alcohol, I had also given up a whole lot of things at the same time. So there was definitely a big void in me that sugar became a self-soothe for sure. I wouldn't say I was addicted to it, but I would say like, girl, you can treat yourself with a cookie because you're not going to a bar, and I allowed that to be okay for a while because it was still, the sugar craving was also what led me to the bar too. I notice now about my habits is I have an afternoon slump when I have just a little bit of energy and I'm yearning for sugar. I could slow down and meditate and recharge my subtle bodies. I could before run out to a bar, get that sugar, or now I could go and get a cookie. So it was navigating between sometimes I need the cookie and sometimes I need the meditation, and allowing either one to be okay for a little while. Now with some more time under my belt, now I've tried to be a lot more conscious about the sugar intake. But like, we've kind of touched on before, removing the alcohol allowed me to see the codependency, that the alcohol was just the other end of the codependency. So codependency was a whole thing in itself that I had to look at my relationships to things. So really now my biggest addiction isn't an addiction. It's a heightened awareness of my limiting beliefs or whatever loops are running around. I have a heightened awareness of my self-talk. which is a gift because it's going to let me know either what energies I'm picking up outside of me in the collective, because sometimes I can absorb what's outside of me and self-soothe from that, or sometimes I can just notice that something that's coming up for me, whatever. But yeah, the mindfulness has been the biggest tool for me to make sure I don't pick up anything else.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think too, what I'm hearing is that I'm hearing like you're like all or nothing personality, just like and that's kind of what I'm writing about in the book. Is just like we have this power inside of us that we can literally move mountains. Like today, I am gonna be sober and I'm gonna stop eating meat and dairy and all in one day, and here we go. It's like, so it's like,
oh yeah,
using that like addictive personality for good, but it can also almost become too much. And then we get to give ourselves some grace around that.
Yeah. And, because I am on a spiritual path, for me, this correlates to the feminine rising as well, and a lot of my do is that patriarchal system within me. So I'm the do, the achieve. And so even I have found that this softening, the sobriety that has been this series of softenings, is just allowing myself to be and be okay, and rest and allow myself to go into the flow and ease and just cut off that part of myself that's do. So that in itself has been a whole shift of just allowing myself to tune into my feminine, to being okay. A bar doesn't stimulate me, but a walk in nature does. And just like honoring everything that comes along with that process of understanding that was the patriarchal programming that was inside of me that I'm now having to allow to peacefully go, and just allow this new feminine to emerge. And this feminine, she doesn't need alcohol. She doesn't need anything. She just is, and allows everything to magnetize to her from that place. So that's where I try to live my life now, is just making my devotional practice something that I look forward to every day, and not this system of before I get out the door, I have to do this, that, and the other. Because even just those daily structures for me can become addictive, I've got this checklist and I have to do it. So turning that structure into a process of devotion. I devote myself to myself for the first hour before I take my phone off of airplane mode, before I go out into the world, before I expose myself to any other vibration. And that's just so much more of that, what the feminine needs in me, is just tuning into her own vibration, so much so that I don't start off my day becoming tethered to anything outside of me.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And what I'm hearing too is like finding the balance between the feminine and the masculine in ourselves, because I feel like I don't feel like that version of us is ever gonna really disappear. It's gonna be there, and we just get to harness the power and just shifted it. I just I just think it's so interesting. And just shifting from being human doings to human beings, and being okay with that, and giving ourselves grace.
Yeah, it is a balance, and for sure, like you said, it doesn't go away. It's just maintaining. It's just tuning into self and seeing what does Grace want now. Does she want discipline, or does she want devotion? Does she want doing, or does she want being? Like, what does she need in this moment, And being discerning and having the self-compassion to be okay with either response, like deeply okay with either response. If one day my body needs to really work hard at the gym, which is medicine for me, and I do love that, then that's what I do. If my body needs to sleep in and get an extra hour of sleep, I'm now okay with doing that, where before I'd be like, no, let's go, you know. So sobriety has allowed to that softening, that it's okay to just sleep in, because that's what my gym day is today, and that's what my body's telling me it needs.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's what my gym day is today. Yes. Yes. Okay, let's see. So what kind of help or support worked for you when you were stepping into sobriety?
Sisterhood. The biggest thing, and it was the biggest thing I never knew I needed in my life, was spiritual sisterhood. It was a circle. It was sharing circles with people. There was no hierarchy. There was no structure. It was just sisterhood of come as you are. And I was lucky enough to find that in, even when I was sober curious, to find a group of women that I could connect with. And by hearing their stories, and again, like I said, I'm shy. So for me, it started by just listening, observing, kind of getting an idea of what this sober life could be like. Hearing their stories, sitting in those circles, being accepted, even sober curious, and then allowing them to be the way showers for me, to see another way and to see a way that's working for people and seeing something that I hadn't tried before. So the sisterhood, it became something that I was pretty, it's so funny because now I would have to look at codependency as a gift, because I got really, 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 attached to going to my weekly meetings to circle with these divine feminine. So the sisterhood was the biggest thing, and that was the most enduring thing, because I got to have that every week along my journey. And then the Gene Keys book, by learning the book of the Gene Keys and going on my own self-study with that, it came alive in my body in such a way that it was like another version of me had written the book. It was like the most profound encyclopedia of dense information that I have no idea how I understand, because I'm not a huge IQ person, but that something about that has so radically shifted and changed my life that it's such a gift every day that I read it every day. It's that meaningful to me. It's like my oracle.
Oh, that's amazing. How did you find these circles of sisterhood? How were you looking or?
It's actually really funny because it started as a vision for me, and it started as me just one day getting a real vivid image of me owning a yoga studio / apothecary. And the yoga studio would have workshops, classes, events, retreats, and then apothecary with this holistic wellness stuff and crystals and books and oracles and all this kind of stuff. And so I had this vision, and it was like I had just moved to Sarasota, and so after, it was just such a clear download that I was like, let me go onto Google and see if there's anything like that in Sarasota. And it led me to Wild Ginger Apothecary. And I just drove straight there, and I picked up a little pamphlet, or I learned about the events that they had. I immediately signed up for my first workshop, which was a summer solstice event that they were having with a woman I'm still friends with. And it was like a whole layer of the onion of me had been taken off after that first workshop. It was my first time experiencing sound healing, and it was like the angels had just like opened up and were like, we're here. And it was amazing. And it's so funny because that's such a pivotal moment to me of my first time experiencing a class through Wild Ginger, that my emotional experience was like, I learned that day or the next day that I had been living in a cave but the cave had light coming in, so I didn't really know how bad it was. And after that sound healing, all the boulders had come out, and I walked out of the cave, and I was like, oh, okay, this is life. And that's how profound the experience was for me, that became my sisterhood. So I stayed very in contact with all the things that they were doing at that, which led to some other groups. And Jamie Day is one who holds beautiful Soul to Sisterhood circles, as well as some others. So yeah, I just kept myself really busy with sisterhood.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I write about this in the book too, just the universe will give us a hand, and then we just have to act on it, you know? So I feel like you mentioned too, that there's going to be lots of hands, lots of little tips, and like you could do this and then, but then we actually have to be open to hearing it. And then at some point you get like a huge download. It's like, okay, I hear you. I'm going, I'm going.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even though we may not recognize it, I do feel like we're always being guided. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, even when I went into the yoga teacher training program, I had just come out of an abusive marriage. I had only done yoga on YouTube at home. And the yoga YouTube series that I really loved, I had done it enough that I had some mastery with it, because that's the perfectionism. I couldn't go to a studio until I had a level of mastery. And then I moved to Texas, and I'm like, I'm going to find a studio. And I find a studio. It just so happens, I don't even know this at the time, to be the studio of the YouTuber that I had been watching her thing. No idea. And then I decide, again, mastery, I'm going to go balls to the walls with this yoga thing. So I'm going to do a teacher training. And so I immediately decide this is what I'm going to do. And then the studio that aligns for my schedule is that particular studio. They have a teacher training info session the next day. And the next day I'm there, and it's in a church, and I'm sitting there, and the light that poured down on me as I'm sitting there about to say yes to becoming doing the yoga teacher training was so, it was like everybody acknowledged it. It was like I couldn't move. Like I would move my seat and the light would just come, and people are like, girl, that light is just on you. And I'm like, I don't even know. And I went into my car and I just wept. And I was like, something greater than me has just led me to this moment. And I don't know what it's for or what it's about. All I know is I have all the confirmation from all of the cosmos that I'm supposed to be here. So yeah, definitely get those intuitive hits and those divine guidance. And I've become even more mindful at slowing down and acknowledging them, because those moments of grace you can skip by real fast and not notice. But that one was so life-changing. It was just like the light literally shone on me.
Oh, I love that. What a beautiful story. Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness. So my next question is, do you feel the universe or a higher power has been guiding and supporting you on your journey? So I would say yes.
Yes. I would say yes. I actually just finished reading. I don't know if you've ever read the book Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson.
No.
I thought of you when I was reading it, because I always just resonate so deeply with the things that you say. And reading that book and it was like me finding all of the Easter eggs I had planted at various ages and stages of my life. I found in that book. It was like reading an autobiography of my book. It was so profound, and in the spirit of oneness, I could see myself as all of the characters. But it's also just this unbelievable process of returning back to the source, of finding the source within you and relating and embodying the stories that are now being told about people like Mary Magdalene and stuff. It's just a whole new level of like embodiment. And I'm like, what is this? But as I embody it and I experience it and I learn more about it, I see the divine guidance that I was getting all over the place. And I just didn't know what it was. Even the term Easter eggs, like I laugh now that I've always said, it's just an expression I've always used when I have those moments of what's the word? like those serendipitous moments or those like coincidences and stuff, I'm like, oh, I planted an Easter egg there. And then I read about Mary Magdalene and like her symbol is the Easter egg. And I'm like, oh shit, I had no idea. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you go the religious route or the spiritual route. At some point, everything brings you back to the same thing, which brings you right back into your heart. And that's just like the biggest process that I'm learning now is the divine guidance is everywhere, but it's also you. It's you planting those Easter eggs as your highest self for this human body to go and find.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that. Yes, yes, yes. And that's what I hear. That's what I feel too. Like, no matter what you call it, just the God, higher power, like anything like that, just having that faith that something bigger than you is supporting you and guiding you and loving you. That is, then you're never alone. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to believe that because I was so convinced that I was on my own and just head down. I'm just going to work really hard and I'm going to figure this out. I'm on my own, but it's fine. I'm strong. But it's just, it's so nice to kind of take part of that burden off and just be like, I kind of need some help.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's a big download that I've got in this past, I would say 6 months is give and receive and be okay with receiving and be okay with giving it to a higher power. You don't have to hold everything. And it's actually a cosmic joke when when you think that you are, because,
Right.
you know, this higher power is like, she thinks she's carrying that. You know, like our ego is like, I got this. And you're like, please, you know, so yeah, it is the process of just being okay knowing I don't get a badge of honor by carrying all my wounds. It's totally unnecessary. Give it to your higher power and know that when you give it to them, they're not giving it back to somebody else. They're going to alchemize it. They're going to purify it into love. And that love will sprinkle around. It's not your trauma that will sprinkle around. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I thought at some point. If I'm picking up all this bad energy, and if I get bad energy, am I giving it to everybody? Am I causing suffering for others? So let me hold it. And it's like, no. Your higher power is just like, give it to me, girl. I got it.
Yeah.
And not me.
That's beautiful. It just makes me think of worry too. How much we feel like if we worry about somebody, it's love. But like we don't have to worry. And then we're
Yeah.
just sending them. Yeah, it's just we don't have to
You don't
carry
have to
that.
cause unnecessary suffering by worrying about them. You know, you don't have to put yourself through that. And I agree. I think like, but isn't that like being a good friend? You know, to carry those burdens like your own,
Mm-hmm.
a codependent friend.
Yes, the only one we know.
Yeah, right. You know, and even what's so profound now, and you might relate to this, is I've gotten to the level of my process in my healing now that the activist part of me wants to come online. And that's like, for me, it feels like the last part, because I may have suffered injustices that I managed for a long time and did my own work to be okay with them. But now, when I hear about those same injustices being done to somebody else, so a dear sister somewhere else, my body hurts so much for them because I'm pulling in what I've already experienced. I already had that trauma to embody that empathy for them. So now as I pray and meditate for them and I share my voice for them, I'm also healing that part of me that just managed that same thing. Now there's a deeper level of going through and saying, if we're going to cry and pray for our sister, we're also praying for the person that had the same injustice. And that's that activism part of me that's like, yeah, it's really slowly just still coming online. I think there's still a little bit of fear about like, I don't want to be around confrontation and I don't know about the protests and stuff, but also coming into a new empowerment place to say, well, isn't it so beautiful that we can use social media to share our platform in healthy, helpful ways that have never been done before? So now we can be peaceful protesters, we can be activists and still keep ourselves safe and our nervous system safe. So that is now a new level of embodiment that I have, is just seeing the injustices and wanting that activism part to come out, and knowing that as I fight for them, that I'm going into the deepest core wounds of healing.
I love that. I really love that, because that again comes back to what I'm writing about in my book, is that through going through sobriety and recovery, we can find like our core purpose. And I don't think it's one purpose. It can be many, and it can shift. But then just using all that channel, all that energy into for good. So, and for me, as you know, that's like veganism, and teaching people just how amazing that can be. And I hear what you're saying, and just like, but what are people gonna think? Like the first post I did about veganism, I'm like, what if I do it wrong? What if I say something wrong? But I'm like, no, we got this. We got
Yeah.
this. Like, just like giving that voice a microphone, and just being like, we get to be our own little Oprahs, you know?
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my next question. So what are some of the challenges that you're facing today, and how would you say you're like breaking through them?
Yeah. So, going back to the gene keys, just because it's a language, I just like my fallback language at this point. Um, the philosophy of our process as a human being is this involution, like coming from the cosmos, and this evolution of like going back to the cosmos. So it's actually like a wind, like it's like winding around us. So we have all these traumas that are winding around us. We call it our wound. It's wound around us. So the process of us creating our stairway of heaven back up to the cosmos is unwinding those core wounds. And so it's actually, has my body translate it, the process of grace. And it's going through these initiations of grace. And for me, that looks like a newer level of embodiment of suffering, of the injustices around the world, a new level of divine will, allowing a force greater than me to flow through me, whether it's to share a message or to go into a meditation, or just allowing that higher power to use me. And that's what it is. It's really just like allowing a force greater than me to serve through me. So that's like so much of what I'm going through right now. And that can look like a challenging mess sometimes, because I know that I might feel okay, I might feel safe in my body, but I might go into a meditation to intentionally pull up some of the dark crevices, whether it's in me or it's just in the Akash, and just try to breathe through it, or use sound through it, or touch through it, movement through it. So I'm still allowing myself to go through the same human challenges that anybody would, but I'm choosing to do it in a very intentional way, so that I'm I'm slowing down all the time and just noticing, how do I feel? What is this teaching me, or whatever. And if there's like maybe a limiting belief that comes up or whatever, just kind of reframing that. So my life doesn't look very challenging anymore. It just looks like I get a little like nod to like, look into this, check this out, what's over here. So it's just in my language, it's just like life is more of an adventure than like an obstacle course. It's just noticing these things without tripping over all of them.
Oh, I love that. I really love that. That's beautiful. Let's see. So do you feel like, we kind of touched about this, but do you feel like having an addictive personality has helped you in life?
Yes. Yeah. And one thing that I will say is that, like we talked about and when we started, there's a gift in every shadow. And when I grew up with two workaholic parents, it didn't feel like a gift at that time, but it instilled a very strong work ethic in me. And for many, many years, I wanted to be the best and the top and all the things. And now I look back and see that work ethic was meant to work on me. It wasn't for corporate America. It wasn't for getting X amount of dollars in your paycheck. It was to work on me. So all of those addictive behaviors, to master it, to get it right, to perfect it, was really just a process of discipline for me, getting me to the point of creating these new routines that were so structured in me that it became second nature to do them. So then it went from discipline to devotion. And in that place, it allowed for a newer, like, softening. But yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, that's a great answer. Yeah, that's beautiful. So what advice would you give to someone who's struggling and want to, who's sober curious?
I guess I would just really invite someone to sit and consider their relationship with alcohol. For anybody that is already questioning it, there's some kind of whisper that's already coming online for them. Mm-hmm. So if they can take some time to sit with that whisper before it's throwing bricks at their face, but sit with their whisper and say, what is that drink trying to tell you is in there for you? What are you looking for in that drink? Just, is there something in you hungry for something? And do you really think it'll be satiated by that drink? Or do you think that maybe it's hungry for something else? So just really getting contemplative with that question of, like, what's leading you to even question that lifestyle? And nobody would not benefit from taking a break. There's not one single person that couldn't just take 30 days off and see what it's like, And if you can't do that, well, maybe you need to look at that and notice how hard that is for you, because everybody at some point should be able to say, yeah, of course I can take a month off, or I'm not addicted. I don't need that at the football game. I don't need that at the concert. I don't need that at wherever I'm going, So it just starts with the first, like, contemplation around your relationship to it. I would just invite someone to start there.
That's really, really good advice. Yeah, and I feel exactly what you're saying, because I think you have to have that curiosity. You have to, maybe listening to a talk like this, like, what brought you here? Because it's not like, if you would tell somebody that's not interested in healing that take 30 days off drinking, like, why would I like it, it tastes good, so you feel like it has to come from within. You can't tell somebody else you should take 30 days off, and I'm like, well, screw you. You can't tell me what to do. I'm fine, I love it, it's party, it's so yeah, you have to. Yeah.
And you know what? Your vibe attracts your tribe. And, if you are hanging out with the same people every weekend, at some point you have to ask yourself, are we talking about our hopes and dreams? Are we achieving them? Are we looking for more? Are we trying to accomplish something outside of this drink? And if that's not your tribe, or if that's not the tribe that you want to be around, then look at who's doing the kind of things that you want to be doing. And that for me was major. I moved around a lot as an adult, and my way in to living in new cities all by myself was going to find a hometown bar, making friends from there. It was where I felt comfortable getting to know a new city and learning people in that new city. So it was a tool that I used. Well, at some point I had to look and see, Well, are these people growing and achieving, or are these people doing the same thing every single week after week after week? And do I want to be like that? And it's no judgment if they are. It's just saying, in my human experience, I may have decided to do that for lifetimes. And in this one, I'm just deciding I don't want to do that anymore. And so I'm going to find a tribe that matches the vibe that I want to be around, because undoubtedly that's going to ripple into who you become. So even somebody that's considering their relationship with alcohol, who are you surrounding yourself with? Are the achievers? Are they the people that, you know, are going in aligned with your vision? Do you have a vision? You know, so that's another thing that I think sometimes, especially when people are young and they're getting sober, it's really hard to look at that. It's hard to look at your social circle and say, I don't think that we're on the same course anymore. And how do I find new friends? I got lucky that I had a vision, which led me to the apothecary, and I found some beautiful souls. Not everyone has that experience or that insight to know to do that.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing too is that it's a process, right? So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my God, all my friends, what we do is we meet on the weekends and we complain about, you know, the latest disease, the latest, you know, drama. I don't know one single person that what you're talking about, but maybe go out and try to find that one person. Like maybe,
Yeah.
you know, find like something like wild ginger in your community, and maybe go to a yoga class or meditation class or sound bath class. And no, you're not going to become best friends with that person or those people the first time you go. It's a process, you know. It's
Yeah.
not, because for me the way I was my mind kind of protected me, it was black or white, either or. Oh my God, I have to break up with all my friends today. I'm going to go vegan. I'm going to quit drinking and I'm moving. Today, we're doing it. But it could be more of like a rainbow of just steps, options in between, and that it, like, everything doesn't have to happen today. Just for this moment, what can you do to lead you a little bit closer to what that little, you know, the good voice, not the like go to the bar voice, but like the little inkling, like the, what can you do today to just shift in the direction you want to go?
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I would call this whole relationship to addiction change like a 7-year cycle for me. You know, 2015 when my dad died was kind of like avalanching me into trying to heal through alcohol, and then the relationship of understanding what I was doing and all the self-sabotage that I was doing. So it took me 7 years to come to the full completion of understanding all of those habits, and I'll never be done. But that, I mean, yeah, talk about taking steps. Some people can do it overnight. It took me 7 years from start to finish to understand why I had to be sober, to even step into my life purpose, why I had to be sober.
Yes, yes, that's beautiful. And we get to be so kind and gentle with ourselves too. Like in my story is that for the first 5 years of my sobriety, I didn't even tell anybody because I was ashamed. And so I did it all by myself. I really thought that I had to carry that big, heavy backpack by myself. So like I hadn't really started the recovery. Yes, I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't even close to beginning my healing journey, you know? So I had to reach out for support and community and sisterhood. That's when the journey really began, you know? But it's
Yeah.
scary. It's really scary. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. And, you know, AA was kind of terrifying to me because AA was bringing back up some of those religious themes that I never felt at home with in my childhood or growing up. So to kind of bring them back around was more of that patriarchal system that I was trying to get out of my body. So to go into an AA room and pick up a new program from that system just wasn't going to work for me. So I know that as an unconventional addict, my spot was not going to be AA, and I had to be okay with that. And I'm so grateful that I found sisterhood, because if not, mine would have been like yours, a very lonely journey that I probably would have been ashamed about talking about until I eventually found that sisterhood along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel too, just by talking and sharing our stories, we can see there's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. Just like going against the drift and saying that actually I don't want to put poison in my body anymore. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be like, heck yeah, that's
Yes,
amazing. Good for
yes, like
you.
we're a couple of baddies. You know,
I
yes,
know.
needs to be acknowledged for, you know, and I'm so grateful to have a partner that doesn't drink, and you know, he never had to go through the addiction himself. He just chose not to drink because he saw it in his life, and he'll always say like, you have the strongest will, and I'm like, I love that you say that, but really I just don't want to put shit in my body. Like I just care about what goes in here, you know. It's I appreciate that, but it doesn't feel at this point anymore. It's not even an option. I'll never drink again. And like I'm so turned off to the idea of ever drinking again.
Mm. Oh, I love that. I mean, to what I'm hearing too is just finding self-love and just like honoring this vessel that we've been gifted. Just because I feel like I've done so much work around this, and just for me at one point it was almost like taking poison, hoping that somebody else would get hurt.
Yeah. 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 And even, you know, understanding, and it's so awesome to have this conversation with you, but one of the stories that are shared in that book Mary Magdalene Revealed is, you know, this ancient high priestess that was an author that wrote these stories, and we never got to hear any of her stories. They were all destroyed. And so I think there's a lot of women, I believe from women that I've met, and certainly in my journey, that all of us have this story inside of us that we've sort of been programmed to be afraid to share, because it's just the environment that we were born into. It's just everywhere we turn, it's there's a repression for the feminine story, for the real story, for so much of what has been lost that has created this uneven seesaw of the life that we live in. So I think that I'm still tuning into that part of me that's afraid to share my story, that's afraid to share all of it. You know, there's a witch inside me that was burned at the stakes for that. There's a repressed, you know, angel inside me. That all of the characters throughout history that didn't get to share their story, that still lives in me. So there's still a real fear about doing that. So even your bravery and coming out and sharing that, I applaud you for it. And for you to even allow me to even add anything into it, it's exciting for me, because it's acknowledging that voice. You know, we speak for those women that didn't get the option to.
Yes, yes, yes. That is so, so beautiful and so true.
Yeah.
We get to just shift that narrative by using our voices and just standing in our power and shifting. Oh, ah,
Mm.
filling my cup here, sister.
You always fill my cup.
Oh, what do you wish, like in the midst of just, I guess the core of this, the point of this question is, do you think anybody could have said anything at any point in your addiction that would have um, brought you to considering sobriety earlier? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Somebody could have said anything and nobody said anything. And so in my experience, nobody brought it up to me. Nobody said anything. Nobody noticed it. And it was more confirmation of how invisible that I was. And so at some point, I probably amplified some of that toxic behavior to see if anybody would notice. And of course, these are very unconscious things that I was doing, but nobody ever did. And so I could have kept going and kept going and kept going. But at some point, I think there was this just part of me that wanted to be acknowledged as suffering. And I think that was a thread that I noticed about myself that's always been present in my life. Even from a really young girl, I suffered from migraines, and it was like my body had a physical reaction to stress, that when I couldn't speak up and say I was hurting, like my body was showing the signs of it. So I do think, yeah, I think Now I just totally forgot what I was going to say.
But it was a cry for help. So
it was a cry for,
yeah,
it was a cry for help. And so, if somebody that cared about me had reached out to me and said, hey, I think you have a drinking problem, and I really love and care about you, and maybe there's another solution, I would have totally taken heed by somebody having that level of concern for me. And instead, the people that I surrounded myself with, and I'm sure very intentionally, validated my behavior. They were doing the same thing. So they weren't going to call me out. So I didn't have anybody that called me out. And everything is, the most sacred thing is what is, right? So the way that it happened, it was supposed to happen like that for me. And there are times, especially earlier on my journey, that I wished that somebody had said something a long time ago, or I wished I had started this process earlier, but it's okay. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And for sure. And I did actually have a friend that told me, like, the year after college, she's like, I think your drinking is a little bit problematic. So I did actually go to a specialist or a sobriety recovery therapist. But the interesting part there is that she said I didn't have a problem because I did not, I wasn't an alcoholic, like, because I didn't drink alone. I could go days without drinking, like I mean, this was long time ago. So I think maybe the conversation has shifted a little bit. It's not, it's not the black or white anymore, it's like a scale. But, and that to me was like, well, guess not. But I knew. I knew. But since she said that, my Samantha took that and ran with it, for another 20 years.
Totally.
But it's just so interesting.
I got incorrectly diagnosed at one point in a psychiatric hospital that I was at with borderline personality disorder. And that was really hard to carry the shame around learning about this diagnosis and having somebody tell you, oh, you have this, and then carrying around this label. And for me, it was just with a lot of shame. And especially because I'm like, I don't know if it fits. And then luckily for me, within the year or maybe a year later, I found the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I was able to see, like, I have extensive post-traumatic stress disorder. This could be labeled as a myriad of things. And she chose to pick up borderline personality disorder. But it's because of the self-sabotaging behaviors, the suicidal ideation, the things that I have, the worthlessness, those things. You can label them as borderline, but what you're looking at is extreme PTSD. So even just carrying around the wrong label for me gave me a new layer of shame that I had to get rid of eventually along the way. It's amazing how many people are misdiagnosed, and what that can do to somebody. I mean, even just not being called an alcoholic when you are going there thinking that you might be an alcoholic, that's of course going to turn Samantha on to hit the bars, Yeah. It's a weird world we live in.
It really is. And I really do feel like everybody's just trying their best. And my point too is that, okay, so this person with all these fancy letters behind their names said this at one point, and I had to kind of shift away from trusting the outside validation and just really, like, it was another kind of I want to say trigger or reason for me to start, like, really trusting what's inside. Like, even though that's what she said, I'm like, but it's not, I don't really believe that. But now you said that. So, I mean, you obviously know more than I do because you're all fancy and stuff. But I mean, we get to just practice using our voice and just like, that's not true, or I don't agree with that. But what if I actually feel this way? And also reaching out for support over and over and over again until you find that person that can help. It's not a one and done.
Totally. And people can only meet you at the level that they've gone. And in my experience, because I had to co-create a whole lot of traumas for myself, gotten a lot of weird shit, I don't have a lot of people that I relate to. And I have to be okay with that. And I have to know that everyone is, like you said, doing their best. Everyone's trying to keep themselves safe. And so everyone is just trying to navigate their own safety. And that means that a lot of conversations are just not meant to be shared with a lot of people. I only have a couple people in my life that will ever know all of the stories that I had, because those are the only people that have earned the right to hear them, to have met me in the depth, to have been with me while I was going through some of those things, you know. And that's another self-love that I give to myself now, is you share your story when it's wisdom, when it is been healed enough in you that you can share it from a higher perspective, instead of putting that back out there as more trauma for somebody else to read. And that's important for me, is just to you know, share from the wisdom, not from the wound, and be okay with knowing that not a lot of people are going to be able to hear those stories or experience that with me. That's okay, because I've got angels, and I've got my crystals, and I've got I've got me, and that's okay.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that. And what I'm hearing you talk about too is boundaries and being okay with having boundaries.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And learning the grace with boundaries. I'm not boundaried up and I'm putting myself back in a jail that
Right.
you have to, you know what I mean? But I'm boundaried up that I come out of this cave and stay out of this cave if you are treating me with love and care and the respect that I deserve. You know what I mean? And if not, I'm like, I probably say it too much. I'm like, love me or leave me. You know, at this point, I am so confident with who I am and what I bring to the table that if you don't see that in me, that's okay. Because I've got that and somebody else down the road will.
Mm. Oh, that's
Took a
so beautiful.
long time to get to
Yeah.
that place.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Such a journey. Life is such a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I can talk to you all day, but we should probably we should probably stop. You're
Right.
You've answered all my questions so beautifully. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. I know that there's so much other language to use, but I want to use that first and foremost to say, like, it's so exciting to, as I said, you know, hear one of your sisters have these dreams and these things that they want to accomplish and be so attracted to that. And now here you are doing it. Of course, I'm going to support you in that. Of course, I'm going to be all in on whatever you need to accomplish that, because you are giving me a big fat permission slip to do the same thing. You know, show up for myself in whatever way feels good. And if my life purpose becomes writing something down and sharing it one day, great. And if it's sharing about veganism in the world, that's your activism spirit coming online, great. Your activism spirit in that way gives me even more of a permission slip to fight for our sisters in Iran, you know. So we just always are just working together, and I'm so grateful for this sisterhood.
Oh, just gonna hold up the mirror and send all that love right back to you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye.